Hello, my friends. Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works Workshop. I've gotten quite a few comments on the coloration of the screen, and everything is just defaulting. I'm sorry, I don't really know how to make anything better on that. It's just a little Logi 1080p camera, and it just does what it does. Also, the autofocus is it does as it does. But anyway, today I didn't start the program. I just let it stay, I don't know, just turn the camera on if you want to say it that way. And so I think it's got the bluer tint today, but I really don't know. It's hard for me to tell. When I start the program, it does a kind of a yellow tint. It just changes it a little bit. So I don't know which one you like better. I'm just going to leave it like there until I hear comments that you don't like this, and then I'll change it. It's fun to be colorblind. It looks like there's 53 viewers already. The first thing I want to say is thank you all very kindly for all the really nice compliments and comments you made on Cash's big day. It was a real surprise to him, as you could tell, I think, in the video. He had no idea, as he thought we were, opening up a guitar that I was going to have to repair. And then later, after the video was turned off, after the camera turned off, he says, "So you guys lied to me, huh?" Or something like that. He says, like we weren't being truthful with him, and I said, "Well, that's okay. We can just send the guitar back to Jesse. It's no problem if that bothers you." Of course, he didn't want to do that, He got over it pretty quick, I think. So anyway, he was having a fun day. His birthday is on the 25th of this month, in case anybody wants to know. So it was pretty good timing by Jesse Burge there to send that at this time. And also, Jesse, I put a link to Jesse out there in the description of this video. There's a link to an article on Jesse. It wasn't really his website or anything. I didn't see that this morning. I just did a real quick search. But this article looks like a really good article, so you might want to read that. Anyway, it's got pictures and everything, so there is a link in the description, so check that out, Jesse Burge. 75 viewers already, and they're coming in from everywhere. I see Germany, Brazil, Carolina, just Florida, just Louisiana. Just like in the old days, we used to say, just like horse manure, spread all over the place. Now, I don't mean that in the negative sense. If you lived on a farm, if you live on a horse farm, you would understand exactly what that means. And I grew up on a horse farm. The title of today's video is Martin Factory Authorized. And so that doesn't mean I'm Martin Factory Authorized. In fact, I'm almost proud to tell you I'm not. Because I think when you finally understand what that really means, it has a little less authority, if you will. Martin, I actually checked into becoming Martin Authorized and Gibson Authorized in my early days. And I didn't pursue it mainly because you have to have a storefront. So that's the first criteria. So there's really two primary criteria, the way I understand it. Now, keep in mind, I haven't checked on this in probably 20 years. So, but as far as I remember, there were mainly two criteria. First of all, you had to be the first one to ask in your area, and second of all, you had to have a storefront. So those are the main two criteria. You don't have to pass any competency tests. You don't have to prove that you can do X, Y, Z better than anybody else or anything like that. There's no tests as far as I know. At least there didn't used to be. So anyway, why did I even bring this up? Well, it's because I'm going to be working on a video this afternoon. Actually, as soon as I finish this video today here with you guys, I'll be working on a video where a friend of mine brought me his guitar and he took it to 2 factory authorized locations first, and they both refused the job. So there you go. That'll give you some idea how good Factory Authorized is. And I did the job in, I don't know, about an hour. I mean, roughly. And that pretty much includes the setup and everything. That and what it needed the bridge removed and replaced, and a few little other tweaks and things, and then set back up. So anyway, you'll see that in a video. It's I think it'll be a good video, a good eye-opener video for you. Moving right along, my wife and I went out and we looked for some more mushrooms last night. So I've got a quick little video here for you, just a few seconds long, and then we'll talk about a couple other things here. We're out looking for mushrooms again, and Sue just found this one. This is your stereotypical mushroom where you expect to see a Smurf standing next to it. Yeah, we found that one in the upper left there is the one that we were showing in the photo, so you can see how big it is compared to the rest of them. Yeah, it looks like a Smurf's house, really, and we found I think 22 all total there yesterday afternoon or yesterday evening. Moving right along, in terms of the sawmill, I finished tweaking the sawmill yesterday in terms of calibrating it, getting everything level, square, all that kind of good stuff. So if I have time today, which I doubt, but if I have time today, and if not today, tomorrow, I'll be cutting some cedar and cedar trees down and trying to saw that into some usable lumber for the farm here for different farm projects. Some of those projects you'll see in videos coming up very soon since I'm on my hiatus. We're up to 93 viewers, and I see question marks scrolling up the screen there. So if you do, I don't have a lot of pre-prepared questions today, so we will get to the viewer questions right away. So be sure to put question marks in front of your question, put them in the comments section there, and I'll get to them in order as best I can. Moving on to the next thing here. We've got our first question, and Craig Morey first starts off with a comment, and he says, what a great gift for cash. And then he says, Jerry, is anyone monitoring your website? I purchased the plans for the RSW thickness sander, and I was away from my computer and the link timed out. Can anyone assist? Well, yes, for sure, Craig, and I'm sorry you had that problem. I will get you those right after the shop talk today. I'll get those emailed out to you, Craig. I'll look up your order and I should be able to send them to you. If you've emailed me about the problem, I'm sorry I didn't respond. I am just way behind on email, but I will get that taken care of. And so for the rest of you, if you do order anything off the website that is a downloadable thing, songs or anything really, they do time out fairly quickly, so you do need to get the download started right away. I think you have to start the download within an hour or maybe 2 hours, I can't remember. And but anyway, you need to get it started fairly quickly. It doesn't matter how long it runs, that's not an issue, but you have to start it pretty quick. So Craig, I'll get that out to you just as quick as I can. The next question or comment is R. Michael Boyer. What was Cash playing prior to the new instrument? And to answer that first part of the question, he was playing a Fender acoustic. And quite honestly, I hope if his family's watching, I don't mean to offend anyone, but honestly, that was not my favorite guitar at all. I didn't like the sound of it. I didn't like anything about that guitar. So I'm really happy he got one from Jesse Burge. It's really the best thing that could have happened. So he was playing a Fender acoustic, but it wasn't a high-end Fender acoustic. It was, one of the lower-end ones, and I could tell the intonation was terrible on it. He goes on to say, Cash does have a sweet vocal, and if I make it another 12 years, I expect to see him make a name for himself. Yeah, Cash has definitely got it going on, and I hate to take too much credit for it, but if you'd have seen him 3 months ago, you wouldn't have thought so. He really couldn't keep time. It was just terrible. But and honestly, I didn't expect for him to improve as much as he did, as quick as he did. I got to give it to him for that because he worked on it, man. I mean, every single time, and I know this is going to sound like I was a little hard on him, and I guess I kind of was, but every single time he'd mess up, I'd say, "Stop! Nope, we got to do that again." And I wouldn't accept it unless it was right, on the timing, because he had some really bad habits with his timing, and the people that were giving him his lessons in the past, they just kind of let that go on, and for me, they kept saying, "Oh, he'll grow out of that." You don't grow out of a timing problem. I see adults that still have, I ain't naming no names, but there's some adults around that have some real serious timing issues. And it's very difficult to play with them, even in a jam session or anything. And I didn't want that to happen to Cash. And that's why I went to his grandmother even more than a year ago, and first asked for him to come to me and let me give him some lessons, And a year went by, and I went to him again. I said, "Look, you really need to have him. You need to bring him to the shop. I need to help this kid." And so, anyway, that's how that evolved. 2 days take is the username. 2 days take. Thanks for such a heartfelt moment. Congratulations to Cash for his new guitar. Can you put the name and address and contact number of the guitar maker, Jesse, so we can find him in ordering our own well-made guitar in the future? Yes, and so that's why I mentioned that I put his contact, I put an article about Jesse Burge in the comments or in the description of this video. I'll get it right here in a minute. Just give me about 30 minutes and I'll get my tongue warmed up. But anyway, so there is a link to an article about Jesse Burge, shows some pictures and some of his guitars and things. And I didn't get a chance to read it because I was preparing for the shop talk this morning when I found that. But I will go back and read that myself. The next username is L2FlyMN. Love to fly Minnesota, I guess what that means. I'm just guessing. I got a mandolin signed by an artist, and when I tuned it up to teach myself how to play it, the top began to collapse under the bridge. After a few months, I quickly took the tension off the strings when it was noticed, and it's been hanging unplayed ever since. Any recommendations? Well, I don't want to hurt nobody's feelings, but in a case like that, most likely, and I'm just, because I don't know, I don't have enough facts, but most likely it's probably a El Cheapo mandolin. It's probably one of those thick body type mandolins with probably a pressed plywood top, and it's caving in on you. That's just my first guess because that's what happens a lot on those mandolins, and so that's why I'm guessing that. Could be a very nicely made, handmade mandolin for all I know, because any of them can do this. But that's the ones I typically see it on. And if it is one of those thick body type mandolins, plywood type mandolins, I would recommend you just go get a different mandolin. That's your best option. If you really don't want to do that and you want to keep it for sentimental reasons and you do want to play it, then about the best option, if it's one of those kind of mandolins, is probably just try to get a sound post in there and push the top back up. That's not that easy to do, but it is doable, and that would be your cheapest option probably. Now, it doesn't help the sound, I'll be honest with you. A sound post in a mandolin does not help the sound at all. It really kind of makes them thin and tinny sounding, and so anyway, I think you're kind of up against it if it's one of those kind of mandolins. If it is a better type mandolin, a handmade type mandolin or something, then you probably need to look into having somebody fix it because it will be a big job. And anyway, it's one of them kind of deals that it's kind of a no-win. No matter what you do, you're either gonna pay for it or you got some hoops to jump through. Okay, looks like we got 135 viewers now, 15 minutes in. And let me scroll up to the top here if I can find where the top is. And let's see, it looks like C. Wilczek was the first good morning there. And then the second one was Haxo123 from Denmark. Yeah, that's where I thought he was from. I was thinking it was something like that. And we got quite a few others on there. So let's see here. Zappa says, Jerry, part of today's blue tint could be due to your blue shirt. Well, that could be. That's possible, I guess. But I do know that you know, like this here, I think, I'm saying I'm thinking because I don't know. To me, it doesn't look that different than this, but on the screen, it sort of kind of looks a little bluish. Here, this is more of a tan or a ivory tan, dirty tan. I don't know what color it is for sure. But anyway, I think there is a problem. Paul Lanier, good morning, Jerry and everyone from South Louisiana. Okay, those weren't question marks, those were exclamation points, but I read them as question marks. I'm telling you, I'm a terrible reader. It's horrible. I know I must be dyslexic or dyslexic or something. I think I'm dyslexic. I read things backwards. Scott Roberts, looking at your heading for today, and am wondering what a Martin Factory Authorized mushroom is. And pretty much every one of them you find is Martin Factory Authorized. Yeah, if you find a mushroom, it's authorized, trust me. Yeah, it's fun to find those things. They're, you know, as I said, they're like adult Easter eggs. I took my wife in places she had never been before on our farm. And keep in mind, she rides horses all over the place through the trails and everything, but there's still places she's never even seen. And I bet I could take her to 20 more places that she's never seen on the farm. And there's even probably a place or two that I haven't seen, to be honest with you. When you got this many rolling hills and, you know, valleys and I don't know, it's just, yeah, it's rough country too. It's not simple to get around in. So anyway, so that's where we found the mushrooms last night, was in places she'd never even been before. Scott Roberts, oh no, sorry, that's one I just read. I told you I'm a terrible reader. Zappo 1 PNT says, Jerry, your friend got a better, more expensive and cheaper job on his Martin. Okay, I guess you're talking about for the video tonight, I guess, is what I'm assuming you're talking about. But I got to be honest, I think he did. Well, in fact, I know he did. Because, you know, I don't remember what I charged him, but I only had a little over an hour in it and $120 an hour, so there you go. No, I mean $100 an hour because it wasn't a while you wait type deal. Razorback Rick says, would it be possible to have a video tour of the cave on your property? Yeah, well, maybe. The problem is I'm so old now. If I could get some young person to do it, so you have to kind of crawl through this cave. I mean, you can. If I was 20 years younger, I could squat and walk and go through the cave, but I can't do that now. I just can't. It's my back and hips and all that won't work. But it's a pretty muddy cave. It only goes back about, well, I don't know. I'm going to say it goes back about 20 yards, 60 feet, something like that. Then it gets real silted in. The cavers that were here back in, well, when I discovered it, it's probably been close to 20 years now since I discovered it. It's probably not that long, 15 years at least. Anyway, when they were here, they thought it was really cool. And they said, man, this thing, we think it's got potential to be a huge cave. And they think that because it's going back into a huge ridge line. Yeah, it's really hard to explain how big that ridge line is. It's big, and it could go a long ways. And it's all silted in, and the reason it's silted in is because for probably thousands of years, this giant boulder had fallen off the face of this thing and fell down right over the entrance, and literally just, you know, the mud and everything just built up over the years, and and when I discovered it, it was really cool how I discovered it. I wish I would have been on YouTube at that time and filming this, because you would have loved it, how I discovered it. But anyway, I think I've already told this story. I was up on the hill and I saw a sinkhole down there, and wasn't very big. It was only maybe 5 feet across, something like that, 6 feet across, and but it went down to a funnel, and there was leaves in it and everything. And I thought, well, that's odd to have a perfect funnel shape right there. I'm thinking that's really weird. That's like a sinkhole, because that's not like a tree falling out of a hole. You can see that up in the woods quite often, and where the tree is even rotted away, and you don't even see any trace of the tree, but you'll see a hole. Well, anyway, I knew it wasn't that, so I thought, well, that's strange. So, and this was up on a high bank, so I thought the creek's right below the bank, so I thought, well, let me go down there and look and see if I see anything back this way. And so I went down there and didn't see anything. It was just dirt, and but then I looked down and I'm standing in the water and I can see water and sand boiling up. And I thought, that's a spring in the creek. I mean, water's flowing down the creek, but yet I could see water boiling up in the creek where there was a spring coming up under the water. And I thought, wow, that's a spring. So I thought, sinkhole, spring, there's a cave right there. I mean, I just knew there had to be a cave. So I went running back to the house. I got my bobcat and went down there and started moving dirt. And just in a few seconds, I hit a boulder that was about the size of a VW. Not quite that big, but pretty darn big. And I was able to roll it around. I couldn't pick it up, but I was able to scoot it and roll it and move it. And finally, I pushed it down the creek about 20 yards, get it out of the way. And then I could see the outline kind of in the rock and stuff. I could just say, well, there's something there. But it was still just mud across there. But yet I could see that there was an opening. And so I started, I think I didn't have anything to dig with at that time, but when I came back, the water was already squirting out of two sides of this opening. It was just like squirting out like a garden hose. And I thought, wow, that's weird. And then I could see a little tiny opening at the top, just a little opening, just a little, I don't know, about that wide. And I stood up and I got up on my tiptoes and I could look in there, and right at eye level, there was water as far as I could see. So the whole thing was just filled with water. It was ready to just come gushing out of there on top of me is what it was. And anyway, I started, peeling all that away, and sure enough, the water starts gushing out. And so that's how it got silted up, and that's why it's closed off back there. But I would love to be 30 years younger. I guarantee you that would be dug out, and I guarantee you we'd find out how big that cave is. But it's the stickiest, silty mud you've ever seen in your life, too. It literally, and you'll think I'm exaggerating, but I'm not exaggerating. It's like digging through silicone caulk. I mean, it's that sticky. It's that slimy sticky to your shovel. You can put your shovel in the water and shake it, and nothing comes off. I mean, it doesn't. Yeah, it's like digging in silicone caulk. So it's horrible to dig. But I'd still have it dug out if I was 30 years younger. Anyway, moving on. I digress. I can't help it. It's just one of them things. Let's see here. After that one, Hoxo123 says, what is your middle name starting with L? My middle name, I was named after my grandfather, Arnold Lee Sconce. Lee, L-E-E. My mother's middle name is also Lee. My son's middle name is Lee, and my one daughter, Rochelle, middle name is Lee. Kind of a family tradition. Anyway, my oldest daughter, Lisa, her middle name is Marie, and I named her Marie kind of after my mother. My mother's first name was Mary. Let's see. You might think I was naming her Lisa Marie after Lisa Marie Presley, but I wasn't. Hoxo has another question down here. How big is your farm? Well, it's a good size. It's 200. My part of it is 280 acres. Actually, I think there's a few more acres than that, but roughly 280 acres. and it's surrounded almost entirely by Mark Twain National Forest. That's what's really cool. So no, I won't have any neighbors moving in and encroaching on me. That's the really cool thing. When I saw that feature, that was one of the things that made me decide I had to buy this place. And for those of you who don't know, I don't have money. I'm not a wealthy person at all. In fact, I would consider myself, by today's standards, I consider myself lower middle class. I really would. I never had money. It's nothing like that. You might say, well, how did you own a 280-acre farm? Well, the reason I could afford it was I retired early. I had made some really, really good investments in the stock market, so I had a lot of money invested, and that was all just more of luck than anything, because I'm no stock market genius, but I was able to make a lot of money just moving money around in the stock market. And I can't do that anymore because I ain't smart enough anymore. But at that time, when I was working full time, I kept my eye on it, and I made good money. So I had some change there to retire on. And then this place came up for sale. But the reason this place, even after all that, the reason I could afford it was because it was cheap, number one, and the reason it was cheap was because it was totally trashed. I mean, like trashed like you don't understand. Like it looked like the city dump. There was trash everywhere. And I mean like old refrigerators, lawnmowers, just garbage, just everything. Just everything you can imagine. I've mentioned once before that after I got a little wiser and realized I could recycle this stuff and make some money, because I gave a lot of it away to a recycler friend. I just let him take a lot of it, and that was kind of stupid on my part. I could have made a whole lot of money back. But anyway, after I realized that, I collected all the copper wire that was on the farm, just the copper wire. I'm not kidding. You think I'm exaggerating. I guarantee you'll think I'm exaggerating. Keep in mind, this is 20 years ago. Just the copper wire brought in like $1,300. That's a lot of copper wire. So, and that's scrap price. So anyway, my point is this place was completely trashed. And I know I've told the story before, but it was the very first day it was shown, by the real estate company. It was the very first day they showed it, and I was already fifth in line to look at it. And the only reason I got it was because it was trashed. If it hadn't been trashed, I guarantee you the first person that looked at it would have said, I'm taking this. But it was trashed. And I mean, you can't imagine how bad it was trashed. I had flames out in the middle of this field. Now, I'm not talking about the smoke. I'm talking about the flames were 70 feet in the air. Unbelievable trash. It took me 3 solid years, every single weekend, for 3 solid years to clean this place up. But I got it cheap, I got it cheaper than most of you bought your house in your subdivision, and I'm seriously telling you, I did. I got it for $235,000 for 280 acres with a giant house. Of course, the house isn't much, but it is really big, but it's not a very nice house by most people's standards. But anyway, we fixed it up and rebuilt it and everything. Of course, you see how I have to pay for it by trying to heat it with wood too. All right, I'm done. But it was 280 acres to answer your question, and I got off on another big tangent. Sorry. Eduardo Campos, could you recommend any entry mandolin that have some quality? Here in Brazil, there's only stag and Chinese mandos. I'm thinking of buying from eBay, but US dollars is 5 times the money here. Well, Eduardo, I'm not sure I know how to help you with that, but if you can find a deal on an Eastman or on my second choice would be the, I can't, me and names, I can't think of names when I need to. Lloyd Lower, you know, that's what I had to think of his name to think of the name of the mandolin. The Lower, the mandolins are called the Lower, Loar. And if you can find a deal on those or on an Eastman, then you're probably doing pretty good. If you can find one in your price range. I would recommend the Eastman over the Lower, but if you can't find a deal on the Eastman, you might be able to find one on the Lower. They're both, I think they're both Chinese made, but they're reasonably good quality. I don't know for sure where either one of those are made, to be truthful, because I haven't looked it up. I don't buy them, you know. I just see them come through the shop here all the time, and I work on them, and that's all I know about them. I don't really get into the details of this stuff, as you guys can tell. I'm like the car mechanic. This stuff comes in and it goes out. It comes in and it goes out. That's me. I'm not all hung up on all the little minor details that everybody else gets hung up on. Like, oh, this one's got this and this one's got that and this one's. And I don't care what it's got. I just need to fix the problem. That's just my mentality. Sorry if that offends you. I apologize, but that's just my mentality. I'm just about business, getting the work done. I saw one there. My scroll here is not working real good. It's either sticking or jumping. Okay, there it is. Mr. Low Notes. Hi, Jerry from Cambridgeshire, England. What maintenance do you personally recommend to get the longest life out of strings? Well, that's a good question. It really is. You know, wiping them off after you use them is a real good practice, and wiping them with a dry cloth or something. And then, of course, you've got these silicone things that people put on there. But honestly, I'm not real big on silicone because I use silicone. You got to understand, I do a lot of other things, and I see silicone, you know, kind of working for a short period of time, but then it seems to let things rust really bad. So I'm not big on the silicone wipes that people use on strings because of all the contact I have with silicone on steel in my other part of the shop. I'm not real big on the silicone thing. So I would say wiping them down, keeping them dry and clean is probably your overall best thing. One thing you can do if you find your strings are dead and you got something to play and you don't have time to change them or whatever, you'll be surprised. It actually works. If you can, you grab a hold of your string like this. Now, this is not a very good example because it's a mandolin, but on a guitar, especially because you got the long string, you can pick it up and slap it like that, and slap it pretty hard against your fretboard. You kind of pick it up and let it slap down, and it will wake your strings up. You'll be surprised. Sometimes it's dramatic. I mean, sometimes it's like, wow, I can't believe the difference. So you have to try that and see what you think. But that's probably my only recommendations, is just keeping them dry and clean. And if somebody knows of a product that they can really recommend, again, I'm not sold on the silicone stuff. It just doesn't do it for me on metal. It lets stuff get real rusty. In fact, I almost think it encourages rust after it dries, because silicone will dry. Anyway, that's me. Tracy Ennis, Jerry, what size bit do you use to cut your saddle slot? It's roughly a 90-some thousandths. And believe it or not, almost any drill bit or almost any cutter like that will almost always cut a little bigger than it is most of the time. And especially when you're moving it along like that, because you'll move a little bit, you won't be perfect. So I like the 90 thousandths, and I'm saying that's an approximate. I'm not saying it's exactly 90 thousandths. It might be 94, it might be 96. I don't know. It was sold by StuMac. I bought it from StuMac. They may even say it's 100 thousandths. I don't know. But it does cut a slot that's real close to 100 thousandths of an inch. But when I measure it, it measures smaller than that. But that's, try to cut them in that range and you're doing fine. you know, you don't want them a whole lot thicker than that, and you don't really want them a whole lot thinner than that. That's really about the sweet spot, I think, for a saddle is roughly 100 thousandths. Give or take 15 or 20 thousandths, you're probably fine. Okay, let's see. Lloyd DeSalt Sr., thank you, Jerry, for just mentioning the name of my YouTube channel, and I hope some of your viewers take a peek. Well, Lloyd, I'm drawing a blank. I'm not sure I remember mentioning your YouTube channel. I know. It's heck to get old. Jane Curtis, how is Liam doing? I have not heard back. His grandfather often watches, so maybe he'll comment today. That would be good to know. I have not heard. I definitely prayed for that young man quite a few times over the last couple of weeks. Over the last week, I guess it is. Anyway. Moving down here, I'm trying to find the next one without it scrolling too far. Eddie D. Eddie, now that you're not busy, ha ha ha, how about some metal detecting news? Well, you fell right into my trap there. I forgot to mention it, actually. I was planning to mention that. I haven't done very much metal detecting over the last couple of weeks, but well, it's probably been about 2 weeks ago, something like that, maybe 3 weeks ago, actually. I was out here in the front, and it was about a week before Alex was here cutting all this wood, so it must have been about 3 weeks ago. Well, anyway, I was out here in the front, out here in the grass, and I was about, 20 yards on the other side of the driveway. The driveway's out here like this, and I'm about 20 yards into the pasture, and I found 2 coins. One of them was a 1907 Indian head penny. It's a D mint mark. And the other one was a 1900 Barber nickel, V nickel. So a 1900. That's the second 1900 V nickel I found right in this same general area. The other one I found over by the barn, which is 60 yards away. So anyway, I haven't found too much more than that. I haven't really gone out with the metal detector. I need to and I want to. Is just just trying to find the time. Excuse me. Kim Warford, can you use AFI? Over my head. Don't know what that is. I don't know what that means. Zappa, you should not get silicone anywhere near your instrument. Okay, well, that's probably good to know. But you know, that stuff that they make, that stringies or whatever it is, that's silicone. That's what that is. And on that it's got like a dauber, a cloth dauber that you wipe on your strings. I'm not sold on it, to be honest with you. Roy Livingston, how about Cash becoming your apprentice someday? I don't know if I got that long. I feel pretty good right now, but who knows in another 5 years. Kim Wilford, can you use a finger plane or sander to take off excess off the saddle instead of a bandsaw? No, probably not. You could use a file. Your saddle, well, I mean, if it's plastic, even if it's plastic, you still probably need to use a file rather than a cutter. Because of being such a hard, brittle material, a file would be your best bet. If you're not, going to use a bandsaw to take off the bulk, you'd be better off using like a double cut file, and then a smoother file or sandpaper or whatever. So that's probably what you need to use. Now, if you're cutting the bridge itself down, then yes, a finger plane would work. Are we out? We might be out. Sam McAdams. Hello, Jerry. Have you ever made a mandolin out of cherry back and sides? No, I have not. I've used pieces of cherry, like on the neck, for the accent strips on the neck that I always laminate the neck, or make the neck plywood, multi-plies there. So anyway, I do use cherry for that, for the decoration, but I've never made the whole instrument out of cherry. I think cherry would probably be okay. I kind of think cherry would be hard to bend, but maybe not. I haven't really tried to bend it, but I kind of, just from what I know about cherry and how hard it is, I kind of think it might be brittle and it might be breakable on bending. But then again, it might bend real easy. I really don't know. I never even really tried it, I don't think. That looks like the last question. 153 viewers. We're 40 minutes in. Any other questions? Kim Wilford says, thank you, Jerry. I appreciate your answer. You're welcome, Kim. Yeah, as far as I know, all the materials that I can think of that you would use on a saddle, they're too brittle to cut with a plane. You pretty much need to use a file. Well, that looks like that's it, guys. Are we done today already? Instead of going 20 minutes over, we'll stop 20 minutes short. That's looks like the way we are. So, nope, it looks like we just got one popped in here. Scott Roberts, I used to use a cotton ball and rubbing alcohol to wipe down, clean the guitar strings. That seems to help. I would think that would be better if I had the two choices. I would rather use alcohol than the silicone. So I kind of agree with you there, Scott. I think that's a better choice. I think the thing about your strings is really the dryness thing. If you keep them dry, and I don't know if any of you, I didn't see any comments about it, but the thing about popping your string, now I'm talking about the wound strings, the two steel strings, it's not going to make any difference on the strings that are unwound. But when you pop those strings, you'll be surprised how much it'll change the sound of them when they're sounding dead to you. I don't know what it does, but it sure does wake them up. So you might try that if you haven't ever tried it. Well, let me think. I think I'm done unless there's any more questions. There's one from Ronald Todd. Thank you, Jerry, for what you did for Cash. Pure class. Well, thank you. Yeah, I have always enjoyed giving kids lessons. Years ago, people were bringing kids to the jams all the time. I don't ever see a kid at the jams anymore, like never. And but used to, we'd see kids at the jam all the time. And what I would always do, and I mean, I did this religiously. I would keep my eye on the kids, just like, out of the corner of my eye, I'd watch them. And if I saw a kid sit down and actually listen to the music, I would walk right over to them and I'd say, here, I want you to play this. Their eyes would get like this. And they go, I don't know how to play it, that kind of thing. I said, well, all you gotta do is sit right next to me. I got another one. I always carried two mandolins at that time. And I'd say, you just sit right next to me and I'll show you. It's really, really easy. And it would hook them 99% of the time. I mean, like, I couldn't even tell you how many kids that I got going in music that way. And you'd be surprised how many of them went on to do really good things in music, too. And that was the thing I would always hear from people was, where do you find all these musical genius kids, I just find them at the jam sessions. It's pretty much where I found them all. Moving on, let's see, Richard Ingraham. How are the fish doing in the pond? Well, Richard, that's a good question. I haven't even seen a fish in the back pond. We stocked it last fall, and then, it got pretty cold fairly shortly after that. And really, all winter, that's a fairly shallow pond, and there's lots of weeds in it. So I think the fish were staying down low. Now, it's spring-fed. The spring water went through it the whole year, and I don't think it even froze solid the whole time. So I don't think it got too cold for them or anything. But anyway, I really don't know. I need to get out there. Now, the front pond, I know they're doing well because my grandson was here just a week or two ago, and we ate a lot of fish that he caught out of there. So they're all doing real good. Eddie D says, what speed does your wood cutter run at? Are you talking about my sawmill, I guess? Um, well, the truth is, I'm not sure what you mean by speed. I don't know if you're talking about the motor, RPMs, and all that. I somehow calculated that out and figured it out at the time, and I honestly don't remember. I kind of looked up as to what speed was recommended to have a sawmill turning at. And I found some kind of information on that, and then I put pulleys on there that kind of made that happen. And so it's kind of running at whatever the recommended speed is, or in that ballpark anyway, in terms of the speed of the saw itself. Now, it's pushing it through, it really depends on the species of wood. If it's a really hard wood, like oak, you got to go fairly slow with oak. If you don't, it starts to do the wiggle waggle thing, gets a little wavy. So you got to just take it a little easy with oak. With the cedar, you can pretty much buzz right on through the cedar. So I like to cut the cedar. It's a lot of fun to cut, really. Well, it looks like a whole bunch of questions popped in here really fast. David Berry, Cash seems like a very polite young man, which is in short supply these days. Yes, he's a nice kid. He really is. He's real opinionated. he definitely is usually not short on words ordinarily. And his grandmother warned me. In fact, when I started giving him lessons, she goes, "You really know he's really headstrong." I said, "Well, that's okay. I have a way with kids. I don't think it's going to be a problem." And I won him over pretty quick, really. I haven't had any real problem with him. But he also knows I'm not going to let him slip. He's going to have to do it right, or he's got to do it over. There's no sort of doing it with me. He's got to do it at least as right as I know how to do it. I'm not saying I'm the best by any stretch. I mean, there's lots of people out there that are way better than me. But I also do know what's right and what's wrong. Even when I don't do it right, I know it's wrong. So anyway, I do make him do it right. Kim Williford, I love kids. You have very talented grandkids. Cash is my favorite. Well, Cash is not my grandkid, you understand. I just want to be clear. Cash is no relation to me at all. I just saw him at the jam sessions for the last couple of years. His grandpa was the one that brought Cash to the jams, and his grandpa had a guitar in Cash's hand. And in the early days, Cash would play a little bit and then get up and play, I mean, he'd just play a little while. And then it got where he played more and he played more. And then I found out, by talking to his family that he had been taking lessons, and it really was getting a lot worse. And see, his grandfather passed away, and I think he passed away of COVID. And so that really tore Cash up big time. But Cash was still taking the lessons, and I was noticing that his timing was just atrocious. In fact, nobody in the jam could play with him. So he just basically had to do his own thing, and we'd all just kind of sit there and watch, And now everybody plays with him because he's in time, So anyway, that's how that all evolved. But he's no relation to me at all. I just saw him at the jams. Big Dan put a bunch of question marks, and that's all I see. Well, thank you, Big Dan, for all those questions. Bill Dedrick, did you ever play with Rhonda Vincent from Missouri? What do you think of her mandolin playing? Well, Rhonda's a real charm. She really is. I've met her and jammed with her a few times. Oddly enough, whenever I jam with her, she won't ever take a break. And I'm not kidding. I'm not exaggerating. She won't take a break. I'll pass the break to her. You kind of look at her, to pass the break. And she goes, no. And she nods back to me, like for me to take it. Okay. I don't know. But she's really a nice girl. And I do actually have her phone number on my phone. And I have called her a time or two over the years for one reason or another. When I had a good song tip, like not songs that I wrote, but somebody else wrote a song that I thought she ought to hear, I would tell her that, or and I'd send it to her. Or her guitar player was looking for a real nice Martin guitar, and I put her onto that Martin guitar, and they ended up buying it, so they liked it that much. So anyway, so I do know her. We're not like best friends or anything like that at all. She knows who I am, and that's about the end of it. But she's a treat, man. She's a nice gal, and very talented. And I never really heard her mandolin playing in person, so because she doesn't take a break. But from what I've seen and heard on recordings, it's pretty darn good. And I've seen her on TV playing it, that type thing. Larry A., on your push for 100K, that very sad push that's dropped to the toilet, it's not even moving now. It's totally stagnant. I'm growing at a rate of around 500 a month, which is nothing. If you're growing that low, you're not going to ever get there because there'll be that many people drop, Larry A., on your push to get to 100K, do you do more videos outside, like while you metal detect, show the opening of the cave, mushrooms, cutting boards, general farm work? Yeah, well, I'm planning to do that, Larry. That's what my hiatus is about. I had to get this sawmill up so I can, it's like in steps. I got a whole progression of steps here. So I need to I've already cut the wood for fixing these horse trailer, and that's presently drying in the greenhouse. So when I get to working on the horse trailer, I'll be filming that. I did film some of my revisions on my sawmill, so that hopefully will be a video coming out pretty soon. I hope that I filmed that well enough. I had so many interruptions during working on that. I am not kidding you. I bet I had 15 or 20 interruptions while I'm trying to work on that and trying to film it, and so it was so disjointed, I don't even know if I can get a video out of it, but I hope I can. Moving on, but yeah, you're on the right track there, and that's exactly what we're going to try to do here. And I am, and so it's an evolution. The next thing I want to do is cut some wood, and I may actually have to just go buy some 2x4s because I don't think these are going to dry quick enough. But I want to go up there and tear the bay window out of the house. There's a bay window up there that it wasn't even built very well to begin with, and it has totally rotted out now. And so I want to either rebuild it or just make it flat. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I'll probably rebuild it, but I'm not positive that's the way I'm going to go with it. But anyway, it definitely has got to be redone. So that'll probably be my very next project after I cut some of the cedar for lumber. Moving on. Let's see. Stan, step 3. Could you please talk some about what your mandolin lessons download on your website covers? Thanks very much. Well, Stan, it's, I'm sure there's people out there that are dissatisfied with it. Because you can't satisfy everybody. But of all the things I've ever done in my whole life, career, whatever, I probably got the best compliments on my training of anything I've ever done. The compliments are almost all similar to, oh, I wished I would have learned this 30 years ago. Oh, if I had learned this when I was a kid, I'd be in Nashville now. Oh, those kinds of comments, just one after another, after another, after another, after another. And so, I know that's not your actual question, but I just want to preface it with that. So the training really goes from how to hold a pick, literally. It's from that basic all the way up to playing songs that have like 12 chords. And so it covers everything in between. And if you take it in steps, and then I would say the feature part of the training, at least it is to me, it has to do, well, the whole training's based around the Nashville number system, so it's all about that to begin with. It's going to teach you how to understand music through the Nashville number system. But within that, because I knew the Nashville number system so well, I started seeing patterns that I just didn't ever hear anybody talk about. I know everybody that really knows music knows these patterns. They know them differently, though. I started seeing them as a black and white. Like it's not gray, it's black and white. And there was like 11 rules. From that, I developed 11 rules. And once you learn those 11, I call them rules. They're not really rules. They're like tips, suggestions. I don't even know how to explain it. They're just things that happen when you're playing songs. Like there's certain types of chord progressions. There's certain types of, if you play this chord, then most likely this chord's going to come next. Those kinds of things. And once you learn those 11 things, man, you can play dang near anything. You know? I mean, it's that basic. And the other thing I want to say about my training is that it's not the complicated, super drilled music theory stuff like, you know, it's not that real formal training. It's all real common sense training. Like any kid can understand it. That's why the people always go to me and say, "Where do you find these musical geniuses?" It's that I'm explaining it in terms that people can understand instead of that complicated stuff. Now, I mean, I know it's a big brag, but I stand by it. I mean, I don't like to brag on my own stuff, but I'm telling you, this training, if you don't know the national number system, number one, and if you're just starting out trying to learn a mandolin, this training will change your life. And that's a huge, bold statement, but I think it's a true statement. And I've seen it happen so many times. That's why I stand by that. So if you really do want to get into some training, I really do stand by my training that's out there. It's probably about 12 hours worth of video training that you can go through, and you go through it at your own pace. You know, you can go back over it multiple times. But it's really pretty common sense, pretty basic. Trying to find where I'm at here. Where and how can you find a jam session? Well, in this general area, we have a few that are recurring. Some of them have been going on for probably 50 years, close to it. The one tonight is one of those. It's evolved from location to location to location, but presently this particular jam, the one tonight, is at the Houston House in Newburgh, Missouri. Houston House was an old 1880s, maybe even earlier than that, hotel that was there for the railroad. Newburgh at one time was kind of a little boom town with the railroad because they had a railroad roundhouse there and everything. But Newburgh now is, I mean, it's pretty far downhill, is about as far as you can go, really. But the hotel is still a pretty neat old hotel, and that's where we jam. We jam in the hotel there. So if you're in the neighborhood or in the area tonight, that jam will start roughly 6:15, 6:30, somewhere in there. And it's at the Houston House in downtown Newburgh. You won't have any trouble finding it. It's real close to the only intersection, if you will, there by the railroad tracks. It's right on the corner, in fact. So come if you can. Kim Wilford says you have 185 years. Well, according to mine, right now it says 151, but it goes up and down and changes, and mine doesn't always keep up either. Thumbs up, people, says Scott Roberts. Thank you. I would appreciate that. Is there anything other than chrome polish? Well, there's lots of things other than chrome polish. I use the semi-chrome polish for, you know, little small spots and touch up, and I even do the whole top of a guitar and back of a guitar sometimes. But it's mostly I use it mostly in spots for removing real fine scratches or buff marks. You know, I don't mean deep scratches. It won't do anything on that. But like little tiny, very light surface, you know, scuffs more than scratches. And so I use this semi-chrome polish for that, and then I top it off with Renaissance wax. You know, I've got my buffing wheel too for the more serious buffing that needs to be done. Gary Boer, a good supporter of the channel. He's asking, as a very young teen picker with limited means, I would lightly spray WD on a rag and wipe my strings to clean them. Help them last a really long time. Well, okay, I'll go with that, but I'm not big on the silicone type sprays, Gary. I don't know. I see it in my shop more than on. I'm not talking about the guitar so much when I'm talking about this, so I'm not trying to conflict with what you're saying because it may be true. But when I use any kind of a silicone spray, like wiping down the tables of like a drill press or my lathe or anything like that, I see rust coming back really fast with that stuff. So I don't know. It could just be because I'm so humid here. That could just be the reason. I really don't know. But it seems like anytime I wipe them down with silicone, I ended up with a worse problem than if I hadn't used the silicone at all. So I typically just wipe everything down in there with oil, but I'm not going to suggest that for your guitar strings at all. How about, Eddie D says, how about your welder? Talk about your welder. Well, I actually have 3 welders that are operational and a 4th one that's sort of operational. It's a piece of junk, really, the 4th one. But I tell you, the welder that's a really good welder is that little Harbor Freight welder. It's a wire feed welder, and I don't use the gas with it. I just use the solid core wire, and you have to do a few things to set it up. But I'm telling you what, that little sucker does a good job. And I welded that whole horse trailer with the thing. I was amazed that, people said, oh, you can't weld heavy stuff with these little welders. Well, I did, and it penetrated really well. I mean, in fact, you could burn through. And the odd thing about it, and I don't know how it does this, but it's just a regular 110 plug. You can plug it into a 20 amp socket and weld and just burn through 1/4 inch steel with the thing. So that's a Harbor Freight, and it's a good little welder. It's the green one. I think it's called titanium or something like that, and I got the bigger of the 2. I think there's a 140 and a 160 or 170, something like that, but I got the bigger of those 2, so whichever one. I don't know how good the little one is, but the bigger one, let me take that back. You know something? Let me go just check real quick. Just watch this for just a second.
Tea and soda pop written on the faded window sign. Ruby and Pearl are her best friends. There you'll find the 3 of them. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9:30. You can set a watch by their routine.
I was completely backwards on that. I got the smaller of the 2. I went there to buy the bigger one, the 170 I think it is, and the only one they had in stock, and I needed it really bad. They had the 140, so I said, all right, I'll just buy that one. Really thinking that it probably wouldn't work, and was absolutely blown away with how good it works. And it never blows a fuse. Just a killer little welder. I mean, I'm not kidding you. It's probably my favorite welder. I've got 2 other ones. The other one's a Harbor Freight, and it's a TIG welder, and it's a nice welder. It works really good. I'm just not a TIG guy. At least I'm not very good at TIG yet. So I don't use it very often, but it also will stick weld. So I've got it for that as a backup. And then I have a regular Lincoln BuzzBox welder. But I'm not kidding you. Of all the welders I have, the one I'm the most impressed with is the titanium 140 from Harbor Freight. And I got to be honest with you, out of the box, you won't like it because you have to tweak it. You have to reverse some things, and you have to set it up just right. And then you need to use a few other products. If anybody really gets one of those and wants to get more out of it, let me know. I think I did put a video out on that, by the way, so I think you can find it. That tells you what the tweaks are. So I think it's out there. If you just type in RSW and MIG welder or Harbor Freight welder or something like that, you'll probably find it. All right, sorry. I didn't mean to beat that to death, but I did. Let's see, Bill Didrick, I like your son's site. He looks quite tall. Yeah, he is. Well, before the arthritis really went through my whole spine, I was 6'1", and barely 6 foot now. My son is about 6'4", 6'5", somewhere in there. He's way heavier than me by quite a bit. He needs to lose weight. I've lost 16, 17 pounds and can't seem to get past that. On a good day, it'll say I've lost 18 pounds. But yeah, it's really hard to go beyond that. And I'm going to stick with it. I'm gonna get down to 190 or die, one of the two. I'm at 207 right now, about. So I need to lose about another 17 pounds, or anyway, 16 pounds, whatever it is. Moving on, I think we're about done here. Clyde Lewis, good morning, Jerry. How do you go about sharpening the small finger plane blades? Do you use your 10-inch grinder? Yeah, believe it or not, I do. Yeah, I do actually, Clyde. I know it seems kind of crazy and kind of counterproductive, but I do it that way. Yeah, this is the medium blade here, but I literally set this on the shelf of the, there's a little shelf there that your grinder typically has. I set it there, and I lean this into the grinding wheel, and then I kind of rotate it. And I try to really watch, and you watch your sparks coming over this leading edge, and you want to get those sparks coming over there evenly. And you don't put a ton of pressure. You're not pushing this in there. That's one thing you really have to understand. You're barely touching it. You're just kind of lightly going across, but you're really very concentrated on it, and you really move it very deliberately. And you get that one hollow grind all the way across. And then I just take it on the, on my stone, and just rub it, and you'll see, because of that hollow grind, it'll be rubbing on the back heel, and it'll be rubbing right out on that front edge. And I use the very fine stone, and then after I get the stone, then I'll also wipe it on the back side on the stone, but I keep it flat when I do that, because I'm just trying to get rid of any burr. And then I'll pull it on leather, and I'll just keep pulling it on leather until I get it just, razor sharp. And yeah, you really have to have a finger plane sharp to appreciate a finger plane. It will just wear you out if it's not real sharp. And the other tip on a finger plane is you want the minimal amount of blade exposure that you can have sticking out. And of course, that will depend on the kind of wood you're cutting. But if you're cutting maple or something, you want to have a very minimal amount of blade sticking out. And even really on your spruces and things, less is more. It's better to do more strokes and cut thin things than it is to try to push hard and cut big, deep gouges. Let's see. Kim Williford put a bunch of question marks there too. Thank you for the question marks. Eddie D. Wow, that's impressive. Very respectful. Not sure what that was about, but thank you anyway. I move on from one thing to the next, and I don't know which thing that comment was about. So anyway, I think that's it, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in today. We're just into it for almost exactly, hour and 10 minutes, it looks like, hour and 9 minutes. So we're going to cut it off right there, and I do thank you for those wonderful comments for Cash. I'm sure they absolutely made his day, and we're all in this thing together, and I really do appreciate your support. And if you can help me out with passing these videos on to other people, especially ones that you like from the past, even if they're old ones like chocolate or some of the other ones, I would appreciate you passing them on. And as always, give me a thumbs up if you can. Thank you very much, Clyde. He just popped up with a super chat there. So thank you very much for that too.